back to the Camp Chronicles podcast. We did have a week off, apologies. I did end up doing something to my neck and couldn't move, which wasn't fun, so we had to put a pause on recording. And then this week I've got really great luck and I actually currently have tonsillitis. But we're pushing through. We're going to get the episodes out for you guys. We're getting very excited. It's getting closer and closer to the summer. I fly in less than 3 weeks now, which is absolutely wild. I did try and start packing this morning, and I've ended up having to buy a new suitcase from that morning of packing. So quite stressful, but it'll be okay once we get there. We thought we'd kind of go into an episode about like the first day versus the last day. I think as we spoke about it when we were chatting just before we started recording, we actually realised that there was a lot more to talk about with this than what you expect. And by the sounds of things, me and Ellen do things quite differently. So we'll go into this episode and we hope it is enlightening.
Yeah, let's start off first day of camp. So we're not necessarily talking like first day when you arrive at the camp, but like first day when all the kids are arriving. It is literally like one of the most overwhelming days. I think like as like staff during orientation, you get eased into it a little bit. You've got like your first arrival group and then another group of staff will arrive and another group and then all the staff are there and it's like, oh, so nice, and it feels like camp, but like you're just doing camp yourself. And then like you hit into the real like nitty gritty, like, oh my god, the kids are arriving today, and it's just like a whole, I don't know, it just hits you like a truck, doesn't it?
It is. You kind of feel prepared going into like your last day of orientation. Then the morning when all the campers get there, you're like, oh my god. And this feeling isn't just for the newbies either, it's for the returners as well. Like, it's just as overwhelming, I think, for everybody, but in different ways. You've got the worries of, as a first time counsellor, say, being like, I don't know if the kids are going to like me. Whereas as a returner, you've got the overwhelming feeling of, I don't know whether the kids are going to be happy to see that I'm back. So there is a lot of mixture of emotions going into that first day, leading up to the buses getting there. There's a lot of anticipation. There's a lot of talk on the walkie-talkies, being like, the buses are an hour out. So it is just an overwhelming day. And I think, to be honest, the first few days are, I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, the first few days of camp are definitely very overwhelming. And I think like you kind of, like I was saying, settle into orientation, it just being staff there, and then it takes a few days again sometimes to settle into having the kids there. So if you are going for your first time, or even as a returner, and during like the first few days when the kids get there, if you think, God, I don't know where I'm at or what I'm doing, and I feel like a loose part, then don't worry, because a lot of people will be in the same boat. But the kind of like first morning when you're obviously getting up, getting everything ready for the kids to get there, it'll very much like depend on your role, kind of, I guess, of what you need to be doing. But for the most part, you're going to be making signs for the kids. I don't know if you used to do it, but we have like, obviously the beds get pre-labelled before the kids arrive, because if all the kids arrived at once and they picked their own beds, you can guarantee there'd be a fight. So you'll pre-label the beds based on requests and which people are friends and which people maybe aren't so much friends. And then we make little like signs for each of their names to go on the beds. Which my number one tip, if it's your first time or if you just got a new group of kids, I always try to memorise the beds in my head. So I'd be like, oh, Summer's in this bed here, Lila's in this bed here, Grace is in this bed here, so that when the kids arrive, you've just got to put like a face to who sleeps in that bed, and it helps you to remember their names quicker. Where was I going with that? Yeah, so you'll make signs, and then we usually make like bunk signs, so it'll be like welcome G10-1, so that you can, but they usually put all their names on, and then you'll put like the staff names on. And then it does feel really awkward, doesn't it, when you're actually just standing waiting for the buses to come in, because it's kind of like anticlimactic if it's your first summer, I feel like, because you don't know anyone that's getting off the buses. Whereas as a returner, it's like a totally different feeling, because you're seeing all these familiar faces and like you're saying hi to some of the kids that you know, and you're watching the kids reunite. Whereas when it's your first time, you kind of literally just stand there holding this sign like, and you don't know anyone.
Well, The only time that I've actually done like the buses arriving was my first summer.
Mhm.
And that was back in 2022. The other summers I've actually been a bus counsellor. But I
Mhm.
remember we had 2 Florida campers arrive the night before in our division.
Mhm.
So I remember it was really awkward because there was like 13 counsellors for like 2 little kids.
Mhm.
But they helped us out with, again, what you said, the bunk signs, and make the bunk chart, which is really nice. And then obviously these kids know what their other campers' friends look like. So in
Mhm.
my first summer, that did really help. I think it was difficult because at the time we had like 88 freshman kids turn up. So memorising who was quite difficult at the time. But
Mhm.
as a bus counsellor, it's just as overwhelming because you go to the bus stop area and not only are you greeting the kids, but you're also greeting all of their parents as well at the
Yeah.
same time. So that's why usually they'll send returning counsellors as bus counsellors, but it has been known in the past that they send first timers.
Mhm.
So yeah, that overwhelming feeling also goes for the bus counsellors as well, where you kind of greeting everyone, you stood there awkwardly, you don't know what to do, what to say. The directors and like the lead staff that are actually at the bus stops with you want you to like go over and greet the kids and greet the parents, but also like these kids are crying and like saying that they don't want to leave their parents, and it's kind of like you stood there really awkwardly. So it's also like that awkward standing around, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to talk about when you're
Mhm.
at the bus stop as well as a bus counsellor.
Yeah, I've never experienced it as a bus counsellor. I think for us, they usually send like at least one returner and then maybe like one new staff member, as like bus counsellors. But I've never experienced that, so I've always just kind of been like standing waiting for the kids to get there. And something else as well, when you mentioned there about like just like obviously so many kids running around and like not really knowing who's who. When your kids first arrive, they all look the same. Like I found it so hard my first summer looking at this sea of just like girls trying to differentiate who was who, and I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, like, who's this one and who's this one? Like I was saying before about trying to like memorize the face to the label when they're actually like sat in their bed or putting their stuff away and stuff. That really helped me to remember like who was who. But at first, you're probably going to get there and you're going to be like, all of these 10th grade girls are look the same. They don't actually look the same. It's just when you first see them all come off the bus and you're thinking, "Well, how am I ever going to tell anyone apart?" But I think when you like after like a day or two, you'll pick up on like their quirks and their personalities, or this person always wears this, and then like you'll be able to remember it easily. But yeah, at first it is quite overwhelming. And I guess you've had the younger ones as well. So was it hard for you having freshmen? Because I guess like not even the staff would have really known the freshmen that well, like beforehand, if it's their first year at camp.
Yeah, because in my first summer there wasn't actually many returners, and I don't think there was any returning counsellors apart from GCSEs that were
Mm-hmm.
in the freshman division, because it was
Mm.
obviously the year after COVID, so no
Yeah.
international staff members had went. I just remember there was just a sea of little kids. Like that's literally what it was, and all had the exact same KTJ tank tops on. Like they all had pretty much similar bus bags. So
Mm.
it was just so overwhelming, and I think like what you said, they just all kind of looked the same because they wore the exact same clothes. And
It's
it was more overwhelming in freshmen because all of them kind of, once that first half an hour had gone by, they all just started crying because they were like realised that they'd left home and they weren't
Mhm.
going to see the parents for like 4 weeks.
Yeah. That's another thing that I think we should probably touch on, because again, like I've always had the older ones, and for the most part, the older ones are happy to be at camp and they're happy to see their friends and they know what camp is like and what to expect because they've been doing it for so many years. So I've never really experienced that first night, like kids crying everywhere sort of feeling. Usually, like in my experience, it's always first night, the girls are just like so happy to all be back together. So what was it like? Did you have many homesick kids the first night? Were they all crying or?
I'm trying to think back to like first summer as freshmen.
Mm.
I think they were all exhausted, to be honest with you. I think a
Mhm.
couple have got a little bit sad, but it wasn't until like the first few days in where the homesickness really hit. But if I'm going
Mhm.
to be completely honest, I didn't really have that much of homesickness issues until last summer when they were sophomores. So when they were like 10 and 11.
Yeah.
And I remember last year we really struggled, like across all three bunks. There was 2 or 3 kids that were so homesick.
Hmm.
And after like a week or so, it kind of settled. But then going into the summer, like when we were at the middle part and they were like sick of doing the same things, it kind of hit them again. And then same with visiting day. And then I've never seen the kids so excited when it was coming to the last day because they knew they were going home.
Yeah.
So it is quite difficult, especially like as a first time counsellor, because you don't know what camp's gonna look like. You
Hmm.
can't sit down with that kid on that first night and be thinking, like, just we're gonna go and do this, and remember last year when you done this, and it's like gonna be
Hmm.
so fun. You don't have them skills until a week or so in because you don't actually know what camp's gonna look like itself. But I
Hmm.
think like my best advice, especially for a first time counsellor, even a returning counsellor, because I didn't have these issues until last summer, is kind of just like listen to them and like almost let them cry it out instead of like trying to instantly stop it and throw loads of ideas at it to start with. You got
Hmm.
to listen to the kids and just kind of understand where they're coming from. And you know, we can relate because we're thousands of miles away from our parents and our family and friends as well. It's kind
Hmm.
of saying to them like, I understand, I felt like this in my first week when I got to camp. I felt like this during orientation. What helped me was knowing that tomorrow we were going to do loads of fun things,
Hmm.
like going on the water slide or, you know, mountain biking if you've got like middle-aged kids type of thing. Um, but
Middle-aged kids. It sounds like they're like little old women.
yeah, it's kind of like it is overwhelming, the homesickness, and I think watching their homesickness can kind of trigger yours almost.
Hmm.
But I think you've just got to find ways that works for your kids, because a way that works for a kid in my bunk might not work for a kid that's in bunk 13. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
homesickness is quite a big topic that I think we could talk about for a whole episode, to be honest.
Yeah, that's so true. And actually, though, just the fact that we're talking about it, I don't know if it's any sort of relevance or whether you do this at Tyler Hill or not, but at Echo, we don't call it like being homesick. We'll say that the kid's missing home, or you say like, oh, they're missing home, because the psychology is that as soon as you say homesick, the kid thinks, oh my God, I'm sick. It's the end of the world. Like I'm ill, and it's like an illness because it's being called being homesick. So if a kid's obviously sad because they're missing friends, missing family, and stuff like that, we always say, oh, like we understand like you're missing home, so that they don't get in their head like, oh, we know you're feeling homesick, because then they'll think, ah, I'm sick. It's an illness. So I don't know if any other camps out there do that, but to be fair, I find that it probably does work a little bit with the kids to say like, oh, like you're missing home rather than you're homesick. So that's maybe just a little bit of echo wisdom, and maybe other camps out there do it as well, that you can take on board that might help. But yeah, the first night for me, like I always find, like once you've obviously settled and you've got the girls to the bunks, you'll probably, and the boys if you've got the boys, you'll probably find that there's some kids that are much more likely to like speak to you first and like make an effort because they want to be friends with the counselors. And then you've also got like the other kids that aren't as interested at first, and it maybe takes a little bit longer or them to warm up to you, but it is literally the first night. So if there's like some girl in your bunk that is literally just giving you bombastic side eye, then just like not giving you the light of day, don't get stressed out about it, because it's literally the first night, and within a few days or a few weeks, some kids do take a little bit longer to warm up to you. They will over time. It's just not something that you need to get super stressed about on the first night.
I think also like a top tip is that not all of the kids are gonna want like your attention and they're not gonna want a hug. Like
Hmm.
some kids just aren't like that, and it's not that they dislike you, it's just that's their personality, and they'll
Hmm.
need you for different reasons. So you will have some kids that'll be like want to give you a hug and want to be like by your side all the time, and then you'll have other campers who, you know, are quite distant but also still like you just
Hmm.
you get in your head about it. So don't be like upset if, you know, 6 of your campers gel really well with you,
Hmm.
but then the other 4 just aren't as, how do I describe it, it's not just as like
But
in
not
your
as
face.
open.
Yeah, that's it. they're just not as open as what the other campers are.
Hmm. I definitely found like my first summer with the bunk of girls that I had, there was two, I think, two or three that were there the night before. I had a Maryland camper and one of them whose dad worked in the health centre. And I remember like sitting with them on that first night that they were there early, and like trying to get like the lowdown, and they were like telling me about like all the other girls and these people are these friends, and then they were like these people are friends together, and then they were telling us about like previous like crazy things that they'd done in the bunk and stuff like that, and campers that used to be part of their bunk that got kicked out or don't come back anymore. And like even though it's that we're telling us so much, I could barely take any of it on board. Like just like try and ask little questions, like just to be interested and like get them to almost, it's not giving you advice, but I don't know if it works as much with the younger ones, but I found with the older ones that's a good way to kind of like engage in conversations. I think especially because we'd just come out of COVID though, my first summer and your first summer, they hadn't experienced proper camp for like 2 years. So they were just, I think, so excited to have like camp back to somewhat normality. Um if you've got like a returner in your bunk as well, it's more likely the kids are probably going to speak to that returner more. It's not a given and it's not a guarantee, but it's likely that it's a familiar face and someone that, you know, they've seen before. So it's important, I would say, as a returner to make sure if, I don't know, all the girls are like sat around your bed and they're chatting to you, make sure you try and include your other co-counselors in it rather than excluding them. Like try and be like, oh, come and sit over here with us, so that the new counsellors don't feel like, oh, well, the kids only want to talk to returners. Like, it's natural that that's going to happen. They want to speak to their friends first, then they'll probably speak to returning counsellors. But it's important as a returning counsellor to try and engage the new counsellors in that as well, especially like the first few nights, because it does just feels a bit weird, doesn't it?
It does. And I think just something off the back of like the first day and the weird feelings and the emotions that you have. The
Mm-hmm.
first day of camp will not be like any other day at camp that you have, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There's at my camp there's just not much of a structure. Like the kids don't arrive and then you go into third and fourth period. Like that's not how it works. It's kind of like a free period, free for all type of situation where like especially what I see with the older kids at my camp is that they're all walking around saying hello to their friends. Like
Mm-hmm.
the CITs are all wearing like their matching shoes and their matching caps, and like they're all just like going over and speaking to the boys. There isn't much of a structure, and that is more difficult for the younger ones, especially with
Mm-hmm.
like your homesickness and stuff that we were talking about. But then all your other days of camp, obviously you're going to have your first period, your second period, all your sports are going to start up. So I almost, this is actually, I don't know if I can say this, but I don't like the first day that much
Mm-hmm.
just because of the lack of structure. And
Yeah.
that's because it's pretty much impossible to have something. So that's why if you're listening to this now and you know you want to go into your first day at camp with some ideas of what you want to do with the kids and like team bonding and like getting to know your campers, come up with some ideas now to do with them during them like free periods, because over the next, you know, however many weeks, it's going to be very much structured until kind of that last week after Colour War where the structure just completely goes up in air. But yeah, kind of know that the first day and all of the feelings are kind of so mishmashed because you don't have a structure to it. And kind of camp starts for us on the evening after we've had barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
Like silence after the word barbecue because it's just not my favourite meal. But you'll have barbecue, then you'll go back to the bunks, you'll get ready, and then you'll go to opening ceremony, and then like that's where all of the camp gets together in the Tyler Dome for us, and then we do this whole opening ceremony, and then the kids will go back to the bunks. They'll probably more than likely finish off all of the absolute junk that they've had
Mm-hmm.
that's been on the bus with them. And then they kind of get them off to bed, go to sleep, next day straight into the structure. Just going off the back of what I've just said, which is my real top tip, is make sure that you ask your campers if they have got rid of all of the food that are in their bags. Because in 3 weeks' time, when they're going to use that same bus bag to go on a tournament, and you find a mouldy cheese sandwich in there, which has
Oh.
happened previously, or you can smell something weird after a week or two, it is more than likely because there is an out of date item of food in
Mm.
their bus bag. So just make sure you're checking for them things.
Yeah, that is pretty gross to be honest. Definitely. And when you were saying there about like obviously the first night and kind of like what happens with your first like evening activity, I believe last summer our first evening activity was the staff talent show. And during orientation there is the staff talent show, which for the most part is each division comes up with their own sort of dance. And then you perform it to all the other staff, or if people have got like individual talents, like we've had people sing before and like do like random other bits, and you do it during orientation, and then pretty much the first night the kids get there, it's staff talent show again, and rather than doing it in front of like 200 other staff, you're doing it in front of all the other staff and like 400 kids as well. So they really know how to throw you in at the deep end, get you up on stage making a fool of yourself. But you just gotta like everybody does it. Like you've got to just get up and like not be worried or not be like scared or anything like that. Although it is a bit weird, like dancing on a stage if you're not a dancer. Like me, I'm really not the best dancer. But you've just got to get up there and do it. And then your kids, are they more inclined to get an early night, or are they like staying up chatting all day, all night sort of thing on that first night?
I think just my bunk in particular is they'll go into it saying that they're gonna like stay up and talk and like they're really excited, and but they also are very understanding that the next morning they're going to be exhausted and they want to get straight into camp. So what they'll do is
Yeah.
they'll have a late-ish night that first night, but surprisingly, and probably the only time they do it apart from visiting day, is they'll get up really early on a morning, they'll do their hair, they'll get dressed, and you won't have to ask them to do anything, and then 5 days
Hmm.
later you're like, wake up, because they don't want to
That's
get up.
That's so true. I feel like that it lulls you into like a false sense of security, because the first night they're all pretty tired, and like I've never had my kids really like staying up crazy late. Like I mean my bunks have usually always been like, oh yeah, like they'll go to bed at a relatively decent time, especially like on the first night. And then they get up on the morning like themselves, and you barely have to like wake them up, and it lulls you into such like a false sense of security. You're thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be so easy. They wake themselves up, they get up, they're ready, they're all good to go on time. And then, like you're saying, 5 days in, you're like shaking the bed trying to get them up. So, yeah, that is a bit of a false sense of security that first morning, isn't it?
I think kind of just to round up that like first day situation, my top advice would be just don't put pressure on yourself to make connections in the first day, even the first
Hmm.
week. Like, don't set yourself up with high expectations that you're going to be everybody's best friends. Do you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
took me in my first summer 5 weeks to bond with one of my campers, but I did in
Hmm.
the end. So you just have to kind of go with them and go
Hmm.
with the flow of how things are. And also, like, if you are kind of sat there on the first day and you don't know what to do and it's your first time at camp and you've got a returning counsellor who's taken the lead on everything because they've done it before, go to the returning counsellor and just say, look, like, is there any way that I can help out? Is there something that I should be doing right now that I'm not
Hmm.
aware of? Just because that'll help you with, getting to know the kids and stuff. For example, last summer I always let, my co-counselors in that first week run the likes of shower hour so that they were getting to know the kids and saying like,
Hmm.
oh, this kid go in the shower now, like
Hmm.
kind of getting them to learn the little things that you don't
Yeah.
always talk about during orientation. So don't put pressure on yourself to have bonds all the time straight away. And also, if you do feel like you don't know what to do, just ask.
Yeah. To be fair, I think I would say the exact same things, like not putting pressure on yourself, and also in regards to like making bonds with the kids in the bunk. Even if you've got like a bunk full of kids that just don't want to get to know you, there's usually at least one that is willing to speak to you and will want to speak to you, like get to know those kids whilst you wait for the other ones to open up to you. And yeah, I think I'd say you summed that up very nicely. So we'll move on to the final night slash final day of camp, and it is, for the most part, for most people, I would say everybody is sad to leave camp. I find that in the final, like for the final full day of camp, there is so much that needs to be done. And like you were saying with that first day of camp, it's a bit unorganized in a sense. There's not as much structure, a bit organized chaos sort of feeling. Because there's so much that needs to be done that you almost don't get a proper chance to be like sad until either the end of the night, like evening activity after our final campmanship, or the next morning when the kids are actually leaving. But again, even when the kids leaving, for us, I feel like sometimes it is a bit chaotic because you know there's always going to be like a few kids that have wandered off and aren't in the right place where they need to be to get on the bus, and you know they're not leaving their friends because they don't want us to have to say bye yet. But yeah, for the most part, I would say most people end up crying on that last night or day of camp, don't they?
Oh, 100%. I mean, the emotions you thought were crazy on the first day, just wait till the emotions of the last night hit you.
Hmm.
It's heart-wrenching, and how I would describe the feeling is like a heartbreak.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it feels. If you've been fortunate to never experience heartbreak, well, you're probably about to at camp and not even realise it. Um, but it is just so, like, such a weird feeling because you know it's came to the end, and like when on that first day or just before the campers arrive, no doubt you'll hear the saying like it's gonna go over in the blink of an eye. Like on that
Mhm.
last night, you'll not even be able to believe that that is the final night that you're gonna have with your campers. So yeah,
Mhm.
it is kind of such a sad feeling. And my first two summers, like I absolutely bawled, but what you've just said there, like there's so much that needs doing. Last summer I didn't cry because I was
Mhm.
just so like head focused on the fact that
Mhm.
like the bunk still needed finishing off. You know, I wanted to get things sorted out for the kids so that they could enjoy the last night as best as they could, like make things fun for them.
Mhm.
Um but yeah, so we usually, the last night is finishing off packing up the bunks, getting everything sorted out, making sure that the trunks are all done. The only thing that's left to go in the trunks is the pillow and the blanket that you've left out for the night before.
Mhm.
Making sure that a nice tradition that I always do with my campers is and I've done this since freshman B summer with them, is I push all of their beds together and they
Mhm.
do what they call pickling,
Mhm.
and it's basically like just a massive long bed. And what they'll do is they'll stay up all night. It's probably actually a bad thing that I do it because I end up without any sleep.
Mhm.
But like you said, there's just so much that's on your mind that last day, especially when you're in like kind of a higher position at camp that you've got to get done. So
Mhm.
emotions do kind of hit you just at a
Mhm.
random time, I think, on the last night.
Yeah. And you were saying as well about all the clearing up, the cleaning, the packing, everything that needs doing. Like we usually have two packing days, so like the last 2 days before the end of camp are packing days where the kids obviously everything needs to be packed up in the trunks. But before they can pack, I don't know if you have to do it, they do a super duper crazy cabin cleanup where everything has to be folded in their cubbies, like all under the beds needs swept out, like the cabin has to be spotless before they're allowed to pack, so that they make sure that all the kids put the right stuff in their trunks and they don't end up packing somebody else's stuff that they've borrowed and stuff like that. And although you do that on the final day, like once the kids have left, the amount of cleaning that you still have to do in the bunk is obscene. And usually, I don't know again if it's the same at yours, but usually the activity counsellors will have areas that they need to go and like clean themselves. So like I don't know, I had arts and crafts counsellor in my bunk. She had to go down to arts and crafts to help tidy all that away. And then on the other bunk, she was like the hiking specialist, outdoor specialist. So she was helping out with outdoor adventure out back. So there was just myself and Aiden in the cabin to clean. I don't know if you've seen my cabin, the massive U-shaped double thing, and it took forever. And every time you'd think like, oh well, this area is done, there would just be new bits of dirt just appearing, or you'd find like tops that they've left, or there'll just be like extra toiletries just everywhere. So the amount of cleaning that does actually get done, if you don't enjoy cleaning, you're just gonna have to get on with it, really.
Yeah, I'm very like, I'm such a neat freak, and that comes from like my
Mm.
first ever division leader that I had at camp. Like
Mhm.
everything has to be perfect, especially when it comes to packing up the trunk. So like I will like forfeit them last few days with the campus just so I can make sure that everything's perfect. And last summer, my division leader at the time actually got feedback from the parents saying that they couldn't believe how like neat and tidy the trunks came back. But it's because I just think like they should leave the way that they came.
Yeah.
But the good thing for me the past few years is that I've had the younger kids, so we've been able to take rein on it, like packing up. And last summer they wanted to join in, and it was so stressful for me. Like I was like coming out in hives. I was stressed that much. But I actually like now the kids are getting older. It is time for them, like what you said, to start packing up themselves. So I'm actually going to take your top tip there, where they have to do all of the cleaning and things before they're able to pack their trunks. So see, I learned from Ellen, and a lot of things that Ellen does at camp as well. These are very insightful videos for me to listen to. But yeah, kind of your last few days will be very unstructured. Like you said, the specialty areas are cleaning up, so you're not going to be able to go and do things with the kids as much. For example, you can't just go to arts and crafts and sit and make bracelets. You've got to kind of think on your feet and use like the open space and, you know, create things to do with the kids. What we'll usually have is the counsellors that will happily hold their hands up and say like, I'm not good at cleaning, I can't do it. They will go with the kids and keep the kids away from the bunks.
Yeah.
Whereas I think as you move up and the kids are a lot older, you need kind of all hands on deck to get things kind of sorted out. But that's just another like little tip if you want to think about it over the summer, like things that you can do on them final days with the kids, you know, because these are the things that they're gonna remember. Like they're gonna remember things that happened in the middle of camp or all the way through camp. But like end on a high, you know, and you've kind of over the last few days you let more things like slide, I think. So even though you want the kids to tidy up and you're really stressed over the bunks, don't like lose it with them because they're not doing it the way that you want them to, because kind of they will remember that stuff. For
Say hi to
anybody
Summer.
listening to this on Spotify, they're going to be like, what is going on right now?
Here's my little puppy dog.
We've got to keep
Oh,
this in. Oh,
say
hello.
hello.
Hello, puppy. Oh, with his little spikes on the top of his head.
He's got a little mohawk.
Oh, little puppy.
Right, that's enough. You can just sit down, please. Oh, on my lap. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, where was I? Last day. Yeah, so the actual last official full day of camp as well, although it's mostly like packing, we do have carnival, which is where they'll come and they'll have like inflatable like slides and different like fun things like that, and food festival. So they'll have like different like food trucks, or the kids get tokens and they can go and get like giant pickles, and or they can go and get like chocolate covered strawberries or different like random things like that. Then at the end we'll have our final campership, and campership is basically like when you give out like the awards and like the final, they get like little above and beyond pins, and there's like staff awards and stuff like that as well. So I always have to like make speeches. Hello. I always have to make speeches for like all around camper, and there's like different things like that. And then again, because I've always had the oldest ones, 10th grade girls do something called feathers, which is basically like them and another friend in the bunk will write like a massive letter about how much they love each other basically, and the memories they've got from camp, and then they make it on like a big wooden plaque and paint it and add photos on and stuff. So they'll always like go and sit somewhere and they'll read them out. And then the 11th grade girls, because it's obviously their very last summer being a camper, they have their own special traditions, but they're kind of like secret, so I'm not even going to mention them on here just in case anyone listens. But yeah, it's like, it's quite like there's so much going on that you don't really get a chance to be sad. Apart from after the final campership, actually, there's always excuse me, that we always go and sit around the lake, and like you were saying at the beginning of yours, where you like light up the numbers for the what year it is, we always do that on the last night, and someone will go across the lake on a boat and they'll like set fire to it and stuff, and then all of the kids get like a little floating wooden boat thing with a little tea light candle in, and they go and put it out, and they all like float across the lake, and then they play play, and everyone's sitting on the side just sobbing, crying, and then they're like, right, go and get your chipwages and off to bed.
That is so funny. So you've actually just unlocked a core memory for me from
Mm.
last summer, and it's not a good memory.
Oh.
So I was like in the most hideous outfit you could ever imagine. I'd been on my hands and knees, I'd been under the beds, like I was
Uh-huh.
literally scruffy, like my hair was disgusting, like just wasn't great.
Hmm.
And we do an awards ceremony as well in the afternoon on the last day.
Hmm.
Um, and I said to my division leader, I was like, I just want to make sure that I don't have to stand up with you and give out the awards, because obviously, like, I was a lead staff member at the time.
Hmm.
She was like, no, you won't. It's absolutely fine. So we get to the bleachers, we get up with the kids, we sat down, and I'm seeing all the group leads and division heads walk down to the division leaders. And then all of a
Oh.
sudden, my division leader's telling me to, like, go down on the floor. It's me in, like, the most, like, the baggiest, scruffiest, like, horrid coloured jogger bottoms with, like, an oversized t-shirt on. Looked like I hadn't been washed for about 3 weeks.
God.
And I had to stand in front of the whole of the camp and give out awards, bearing in mind this is photographed as well, may I also add.
Oh no.
It was traumatising, honestly, hands down one of the most embarrassing things that has happened at camp. But also when I think about it, like, I didn't even care.
Yeah.
Like, if that was at home and I had to get up and like give a massive speech in front of like a crowd of people in like the worst outfit I could ever imagine, like I just
Hmm.
couldn't do it. But because it was at camp, I was like, oh, I've just got to get on with it and do it. So
Hmm.
we also do that. So over the summer we do like something called Starfish, and that's our camp values, and each letter means something.
Yeah.
And what they'll do is like they'll have like an overall Starfish award, and then they'll have like a couple of other ones. It's like plaques they get.
Yeah.
So over the summer they'll get like a certificate and a starfish necklace. Whereas on the last day, if they win the award, sorry, they will get like an actual like plaque with their name on, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So we do that, and then on the night time, what we do is we kind of get ourselves sorted. We'll all go into the social hall and we'll watch the slideshow. Now this is emotional. It's
Mm.
basically it's like a 45-minute long video of all the pictures and all the videos and all the content that like the creators have been able to get over the summer, all put together with music over the
Oh.
background, and then the CITs get up and they sing our camp song for the last time, and then like
Mm-hmm.
everybody's just sobbing and crying. And then what we'll do is we'll do what you said. We get up from the social hall, we go over onto boys' side, and we'll have the burning of the numbers. So it'll say like 2025 it did last year, and then it
Mm-hmm.
had like next to the 2025 on both sides, it had two things that represented stuff that happened over the summer. So, for example, I'm pretty sure last year we had a banana because the Savannah
Oh
banana
yeah.
people broke our colour war out. So we do that, and then kind of after that, you're left to do whatever you want to do in your own divisions. So it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of just to tie up the night. Something that we done last year, which was really nice actually, was we got all the kids back to the bunk, which takes forever by the way because they're just scattered everywhere when they do the burning of the numbers. It's a nightmare, logistical
Mm-hmm.
nightmare. And then you've got your counsellors going over to their friends, hugging each other, crying, and I'm like, where's the kids? So stressful. But you'll get them all back to the bunks. It's usually quite chilly on the last night. So you want to get them all wrapped up and everything, and then we got them down to the gazebo in front of the lake, and we kind of
Mm-hmm.
sat them all down. We've done a little speech, and then we gave them a little Hershey bar because obviously they go on their first overnight trip next summer, this summer coming. And then we gave them like a junior t-shirt, and it kind of like welcomed them going into middle camp now and not being in lower camp anymore. So, but it just really does depend on your division what you kind of do after we've done like the slideshow night and the burning of the numbers.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I don't know again really what the lower camp people do at my camp, to be fair. I'm sure they've got their own thing that they do, like in their own divisions. And like on boys' side even as well, like boys' side, each of the grades have got like their own specific awards and things that they do, like once everyone's back in the bunks. So there are like a lot of kind of camp traditions, I would say, that are involved on that last night. My kids usually like us stay up late-ish, but then obviously they know they've got to go. As long as that they've got to get up early in the morning. Sorry, as long as they're like all back in the bunk, I'll put lights out. And if they're sitting and talking till 3 o'clock in the morning, it's fine. Like as long as they're in the bunk, that's all that matters. And then the next morning, it's usually a pretty early start, isn't it? Getting the kids out. I mean, you were saying you've got Florida campers that leave at 4 a.m. I'm not sure if our Florida campers leave that early, but I just know that I think morning flag is at something like 7:15, like for first breakfast, and then like you just have all the kids like because girls' side's up on a hill and the dining hall and boys' sides is down at the bottom of the hill. All the girls like lugging their final big bags and suitcases and stuff like that down to the dining hall to have breakfast. And then after breakfast, there is a lot of time where you just kind of are just stood waiting for the buses to pull in. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, they didn't send enough buses for one of the drop-offs. So they had I don't know if they switched one of the buses that was meant to be going somewhere else, or we had to use, I think they had to get 2 or 3 people to use like the camp minivans that we had to drive the campers to the like pick up spot because they didn't send enough coaches basically, which was obviously a bit stressful for the people that had to sort that out. Yeah, it's a bit chaotic whilst you're waiting for everyone to leave because the different buses to the different places will leave at separate times, and there's kids running around everywhere crying. Some kids who look like they like don't care that they're leaving. Some kids that are like sat sobbing in a corner. Same with staff as well, to be fair.
Well, usually what'll happen is on our last night when I get all the kids to the bed,
Mm-hmm.
like in bed, they'll stay up. They'll stay up for hours. My kids do it. They've done it since freshman B summer. They'll do an all nighter. Freshman B summer, they lasted till about 12 o'clock, midnight.
Mm.
Last summer, they lasted the full time, which was
Oh, God.
extremely stressful for the counsellors who wanted to go to sleep. And
Mm-hmm.
then what we could hear outside of our bunks was the fact that the CITs and the teens don't go to sleep at all. They have no curfew on the last night.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are the bane of my life, bane of my existence on that last night, by the way. Because, like Ellen said, my campers, Florida ones and like Texas ones, get picked up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 a.m.
That's
And
brutal.
that is like usually when it hits me and I'm sobbing and I'm crying. But like, I think it's also because of the exhaustion. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
tired. But then you'll get them on the bus and then you'll have like 2 hours, 3 hours before everybody else is getting up as well. So say like
Mm-hmm.
you'll get the kids up at normal time that you would usually. You'll get them to get all the bags packed, their clothes on so you can put everything final in their trunks, and then they'll go off into the dining hall. We have a tradition that the kids always have Pop Tarts. Don't know why. Just think it's because the support staff can't be bothered to cook anymore because the poor things have
Don't
cooked three
don't blame
meals
them.
for 7 weeks. Bless them. I
Mhm.
don't know how they do it. Hats off to the
Insane.
support staff.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, they'll go in the dining hall. They'll have the Pop Tart, and then you'll bring them back to the bunk. You'll make sure that they've got everything that they need, and then the buses start pulling up, and then it really hits you. So the buses will pull up. You're getting all the kids onto the right one. The kids that you'd expect not to cry in my bunk cry their eyes out, and that like
Mhm.
low-key breaks my heart so much seeing the
Mhm.
tough kids cry,
Mhm.
because all they've talked about for the past week is going home and how they're exhausted and they can't wait for this food and they can't wait to go and do this and they can't wait to have their phones, and then it actually hits them on that like day just before they're getting on the buses that they're actually leaving camp, and then they're sobbing.
Yeah.
And then you'll have like the proper, like, how I'd explain it is like the rugby lads. They'll be sobbing their heart out, like
Yeah.
sobbing, crying snot everywhere. So that morning is quite emotional. I don't know, are you a crier on the last morning?
It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And usually like I'll be fine for a bit and then one of my kids will come over and I've got to say bye to them and they're like sob and cry and then I'm like, oh, it'll set us off again. But I've found that first summer I cried, but I didn't cry as Well, I did cry a decent bit. But I knew I would be coming back for my second summer, so it wasn't as bad. And then second summer, I didn't know if I'd be able to come back, so I cried a lot more. And then third summer just gone, again, I ended up knowing, like, realistically, I definitely wanted to come back. So I didn't cry as much last summer because I kind of knew that I would be coming back again this summer. Who knows what I'll be like this year? We will see. But yeah, it's just one of those like weird days, and it literally does feel like once all the buses roll out and all the kids have gone, and like we'll have a final sort of staff meeting. They say like, "Thanks for the summer. This has been the best year of staff we've had so far," and they say
Every
that
year.
every year. Yeah. And then you go back and you like clear everything up, tidy everything, pack yourself. It feels like it could be back at orientation again. It's like the weirdest feeling. And then obviously buses roll out, everyone goes into New York City and you have your staff party, and then you kind of forget that you've ever even like been working at a summer camp for 7 weeks. It just feels like you're having a massive party with your friends. Yeah, it's a weird day with a lot of emotions, definitely.
Well, last summer I didn't cry, and like the kids must have thought I was so cold because every other year I've cried my eyes out. But then the kids left on the buses, still felt no emotions. The camp
Mhm.
silence is crazy when the buses roll out. Like if you get
Yeah.
up on a morning during camp, it's not silent because you know the kids are there and they're in the
Yeah.
bunks, and like that sounds weird because obviously it is silent, it's first thing on a morning, but like you can feel it, you can
Hmm.
sense that they're there. Whereas when them buses roll out, the silence and
It's
like actually
loud.
realizing that camp is empty, it like that's when it hits me really. So like last summer I was packing up my suitcase, and I'd say I got about 5 minutes into it, and then I just started uncontrollably sobbing, like literally couldn't sort myself out. And then I didn't stop crying for about 3 days.
Mm.
So the emotions are real when it comes to camp, and I've been a crier the last 2 years. Wasn't so much last year until the kids actually left. But I knew like I was seeing majority of my campers after camp anyways. So
Yeah.
it kind of, I think for me it was actually leaving camp where the emotions were. It wasn't that the kids had left because I knew I was going to see them again.
Yeah.
Um, but it's that silence and then the absolute mad rush to make sure that the bunks are clean, everywhere's tidy, you've packed all of your stuff.
Hmm.
Because I didn't pack until the morning I was leaving
Yeah.
last year. It was so stressful. So it's like making sure everything fits in, and then it's so fun that you get to do kind of the party on the last night. We kind
Hmm.
of usually meet up in New York City at a bar called the Mean Fiddler. It's an Irish
Yeah.
bar.
We
Oh
went.
yeah.
Yeah.
We were probably sitting there at the same time last year.
Probably
Um,
first summer.
but yeah, we go to this place called the Mean Fiddler and everyone meets up. But I'm pretty sure that this year we're all actually going to fly straight to Nashville on that night time, with
Hmm.
it being a Saturday. So we can have like a Saturday in Nashville on Broadway, which is going to be crazy that at like 10 o'clock in the morning I was getting the kids ready to get on the bus, and then
Hmm.
next year at 10 o'clock at night I'm going to be on Broadway in Nashville.
Literally. It does, it happens so quick. I mean, our like staff party, I think it's because we're so close to New York. Most people just want to like do New York for a few days at like the start of their travel. So that's why kind of everybody goes back there. Obviously, most of the staff are from around New York area, so it's easy enough for everybody to just kind of meet there. It's not like an official party, but we'll usually try and organize somewhere like where we all meet, and I would say the majority of staff do end up there. And then again, the last few years it's been okay, New York's done, straight Nashville for extended. It basically just feels like an extended version of camp because most people end up traveling straight to Nashville. But yeah, I feel like that kind of rounds up everything to do with the first night slash day versus the final night slash day of camp. Two very hard days, but in their own ways, I would say. First night and day is obviously you're just overwhelmed, you know what's going on, and then the last night you're just so sad that you're leaving everything. But yeah.
Like you said, we've kind of summed up everything that happens first day versus their last night.
Hmm.
My top advice to give to people is give it your all. what you give in a
Mhm.
camp, you'll get out of it.
Mhm.
On them first days, that first week, ask for advice, be hands on, don't think you're being annoying, put
Mhm.
yourself out there. It really means a lot and it goes a long way.
Mhm.
The last week, the last few days, it's going to be the most overwhelming feeling. You can't believe that it's come to the end. You know, it's going to be so sad saying goodbye to your kids. But just treasure the whole time. And even though you're exhausted towards them last weeks, don't give up. You're so close to the
Mhm.
end. Keep giving it that energy and that laughter and showing all the love that you can for your campers, because these are the times that they really remember. So yeah, that would be probably my advice.
Tugging at the heartstrings there. That was emotional, that one. That was deep. But yeah, as quick as camp comes around and you're there, that's as quick as like camp finishes. Like literally blink and you'll miss it. First week feels like the longest ever, and then after that it'll just fly by. So like Summer said, just kind of put your all into it and give it everything you've got. But yeah, we'll end this episode here. We've probably only got a few episodes left now until we actually start heading off to camp. Obviously, summer's going in a matter of weeks. I've still got just under 2 months before I head out, sadly. But I know it's going to come around very quick. But thank you all for listening, and we'll speak to you in the next episode.